This is a demonstration of the Pastoral Genie, a new product from School Genies, part of School ICT, which will analyse your attendance and exclusion data between two dates for any year. To get started using the Genie, enter the start and end dates of the period you wish to analyse and click Generate Reports. The Genie will then connect to your SIM server. It will prompt you to enter your user name and password so that it can talk to your SIMs and extract the information it needs. This information is extracted via the reports that were imported when you set up your Genie, and it brings out student, exclusion, group, attendance and diary data in order to populate itself. Once it's finished, and it takes around 4 minutes depending on the size of the school, you can access any of the analysis via the buttons or via the tabs. You have 3 analyses and a working sheet which shows you all of your students. So let's have a look at the group analysis. So this analysis gives you an overview. It could be for the whole year or it could be for the year to date, but it shows you all of the information between the dates you have used. In Green Abbey School that we are using for our example, we have a whole school cohort of 939, and it's going to show us all of the data we need and break it down into our key groups. First of all, we have a gender split, boy, girls, free school meals, those that are currently free school meals, that is. Free school meals ever 6, which is your disadvantaged pupil premium students. Pupil premium indicator students, which would be including all of those above, but also your service children and any adopted from care. Then it breaks down to show your looked after children, English as an additional language, any young carers that have been identified. In a secondary school, any students in receipt of a bursary, which is effectively the sixth form version of pupil premium. And then it breaks down your SEN groups. It shows the SEN E code, K code for those receiving SEN support, and N code for those students that did have an SEN status but have no longer. And then your SEN all and SEN not are shown by using the E or K to show all SEN and N or blank to show those that don't have any support. And it will then show your year groups. So this school of 939 students has a percentage absence rate. All of the attendance data is shown in the red columns. Percentage absence rate of 4.3. That is tracked against the national figure to the right of the column. In this instance is 5.5, so the school's doing quite well. They've got a green traffic light for their overall absences. Then it will break down and show the percentage authorised absences and track those against the national figure. And as you can see in this instance, they've actually gone over the figure, so they've got a red traffic light. The next few columns don't have a national statistic, but they're there for school purposes. So to show you the amount of attendance you are losing to family holidays and the amount of lates and the relative percentage of those. Then it looks at the percentage attendance figure as opposed to absences and tracks that against the national figure. Now the next few columns are favourites of Ofsted. This first column shows the number of persistent absentees, or those students that have 90% or less attendance in the school. In this instance, there are 67. So 67 students of the 939 represents 7.1% of the school. And we can see by clicking on the little yellow arrow who those students are and their key figures, so their percentage attendance for the whole year and it broken down into the half terms. Any of the groups analysed, you're able to drill through to students, and a particular Ofsted favourite, as I mentioned, is to say what percentage of your SEN students are persistent absentees. So by running the Genie, you would be able to answer this question quite clearly, as well as any others. That PA figure is tracked against the national figure, and as you can see, this school is doing quite well. The next column is not ragged against national figures because there isn't one, but it's for your school information. It's the percentage attendance of that persistent absentee group. So those 67 students have a percentage attendance rate of 82.2. So you can clearly see, looking down the list, where the worst offenders are. The very last column shows the amount of school absence that is attributable to the persistent absentees. In this case, it's 24% of absence. So almost a quarter of that 4.3% of absences are made by the persistent absentees. There is a national figure, but it is only at whole school level, secondary or primary. It doesn't break it down into the groups. It is open to interpretation, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing to have all of your absence attributable, or a greater amount of your absence attributable to those persistent absentees. If you wanted to change the threshold from the statutory 10% to look at students with lower percentage attendance, it's quite easy. It's a one-click change. We're going to change it to 20% for these purposes. So we're going to be looking at students with 80% or more percentage attendance. And as we can see, there are 30 students at this level, and it's showing us those. And it's quite easy to click to change back to the 10% default. The national tables that are used in the Genie are updated regularly as they are published by the DfE, and it will detect what type of school is running the Genie and what years you are selecting, and select the relevant table, the most recent table to use. So let's have a look at some of the filtering. The turquoise box allows you to exclude certain cohorts from your figures. As we can see, if you were a primary school, you might want to exclude your nursery and foundation stage. And in this instance, we're going to show it without the sixth form. You can see a drop in the numbers and the figures. It is instant, and we don't see any sixth form in the year analysis. If we put that back and have a little look at excluding the persistent absentees from our data, if we click that, we instantly see our figures go up because it's going to exclude those 67 students from the analysis. So we can see what the attendance and exclusion data would look like without those students. You can also exclude leavers between the dates that we're analysing, and exclude permanently excluded students from the data. The red box contains attendance options. These are different codes can be excluded from the figures themselves. So if you were in a school where religious observance absences make a big part of your school, you can tick and apply the filter, and it will rerun, the Genie will rerun all of the attendance figures, changing the statistical meaning of that mark from absent to no mark required. So effectively you can see the effect that religious observance or holidays, if that's an issue in your school, study leave and excluded students are having on your data. It takes a minute or so for that to rerun, but once it's done, you can clearly see what impact they're having on your data. And to remove those filters, you just untick the box and click apply. All analyses are filterable by year group. So at the moment we are looking at whole school, 939 students. If we were to change that to year 10, instantly we've got a cohort size of 161, and it's showing us that it's year 10, and we're now looking at the gender split within year 10 and the SEN and looked after children within year 10. And as you can see, year 10 has 5 persistent absentees. It then breaks it down. In addition to the year, it will show you the registration groups or classes within that year. Any of the filters that are applied on the group analysis sheet or any other will automatically apply to all other sheets. So we can see that the ethnicity analysis is also showing year 10, as well as the half-term analysis. If we change it back to whole school, we can see it updating back to our original numbers, and the group analysis is showing whole school and half-term. So let's have a look then at the exclusion data that's being analysed. As you can see, all of the orange headings relate to exclusions. There is a little note in the top that explains exactly how the figures are being generated. The first column shows the number of fixed term exclusions in the school. The second column is the percentage of those students that have the fixed term exclusion, and that is the number of fixed term exclusions divided by the number of students, rather than, it's not a percentage of the students, it's a percentage of the exclusion. The second column is the percentage of the students, and very often this may be the same. However, if you've got a school where one student could be responsible for 10, you can see where you'd benefit from looking at that. So at the moment in this school, they are identical. All of these have a national figure and they are traffic lighted against them, and they're doing quite well in this school, clearly. And then it will show our permanent exclusions and the percentage of students that have those. Exclusion data is more detailed on the half-term analysis. If we have a look at the ethnicity analysis, all of the exact same data that is used in the overview is broken down into the ethnic groups. It doesn't matter what code set you use in your school. If you've got the long codes where you have white English, white Cornish, white Scottish, it will map automatically to the DFE overview codes. For example, white English would be included in the figures for white British and white in this school. Breaks down into all of those and tracks it against the national contextual data. And at the bottom you get a little additional where any students that have information not yet obtained are shown, as well as blanks and refused. Obviously there are no national data for those, but they do help with school housekeeping, showing you where you may need to get some additional information for students. So finally, let's have a look at the half-term analysis. As I mentioned before, all of the attendance data, the key data is included here, but it's broken down half-term by half-term using the diary dates and the dates that were used when you set up your academic year. So in Green Abbey School, half-term 1 was from the 1st of September to the 22nd of October. We've got the purple columns, or the national figure columns, are all located to the left of the screen, and the traffic lighting is applied to those figures. So we've got a little group of 3 red columns for the attendance. We've got the percentage attendance, the number of persistent absentees, and the percentage of that group that are persistent absentees, because we're looking more at the problem students on this analysis. The exclusions are broken down into a little bit more detail than on the overview, in that it will give you your total number and the number of students with 1 or more fixed term exclusions, but it also shows you the number of students with 2 or more fixed term exclusions. This is where you can do some delving and into further analysis, and it will show you your permanent exclusions. For each set of exclusion data, you have also the number of days that were missed due to being in exclusion. As you can see, all of the groups are live. They do change according to what happened to the student. So anyone coming on roll at Christmas wouldn't be included in half term 1, and anyone who was an an SENK code, for instance, in half term 1, and then had an changed to an E status in half term 3 maybe, that would be reflected in the group size, and obviously it will make a difference to any percentage figures. So we can see in this school we've got half term 1 a whole school size of 939. In half term 2 it was the same, even though they had almost double the amount of persistent absentees. And then in half term 3 they clearly had somebody leave the school, but their persistent absentees went up even more, so we're able to track that. And they're now they've got a red traffic light now for boys, whereas they didn't in half term 2. And it shows us that right the way across the dates that have been analysed. Obviously if you're running your whole Genie just for the first half term, these would all be blank. When the Genie is run, it does detect any missing marks that are in Sims. It won't affect any of the figures that's shown in the Genie because missing marks are ignored. However, it will mean that figures in the Genie will be different to Sims. So our advice is to deal with those missing marks wherever possible. Finally, there is the ability to remove all student data from the Genie to comply with GDPR. If you are storing this on a public network somewhere where you haven't got limited permissions, it's a one-click delete all student data, and that will clear it all down, ready to run again, and it can only be run by somebody with permissions in Sims.